Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We got a full show today. We have Seth Walder from ESPN joining us to go over some receiver metrics. Also, Phil Perry, of course, will be here, and Matt Cassel on what the Patriots need to do to get some more guys incorporated. We'll also break down this matchup with the Lions, which kicks off a 6-game stretch, which is pivotal for the Patriots' 2022 aspirations. Look at the 6 games coming up. You got Lions, Browns, Bears, Jets, Colts, Jets. The Patriots can't look down their nose at any of those teams, but they're not looking up at any of those opponents either, even with their quarterback uncertainty. And one of the key subplots to this stretch will be how do they incorporate some of their key pass catchers. Check this out. Through 4 games, we're going to flash up these numbers for their 5 most highly paid receiving fellas, okay? It's brought to you by Shaw's, perfecting the art of fresh. You look at it right there, Nelson Agholor, 14 catches, 225, Bourne, Parker, Smith, Hunter Henry. Between the 5, $28 million invested in those guys in guaranteed salary this year. So, as I said, we'll bring in Seth Walder from ESPN Analytics to go over some of the new metrics that they're using to rate wide receivers. Phil will join us as well to talk about some of the things he's been pounding for how they can better incorporate some of these guys in the offense and get Mac Jones more comfortable when he returns. And Matt Patricia, how's he been doing? Well, check out his successor, Dan Campbell, and what he had to say about what he's seeing from the Patriots in the last few weeks. Dan Campbell.
They're not going to hold the ball long. They're going to establish the run, quick screens, and they're going to play the long game with you. They're going to try to ground it out and chew up the clock, play good defense. So offensively, they're going to be select. And look, I think Coach Patricia's done a pretty good job over there. You can see him getting better every week and adapting. And if he's watching our tape from last week, there's a number of things he's going to try to attack, or I would. And so those are things we got to be ready for. But certainly, man, if we allow them to just pound it out and be efficient and get first downs and pound it out and quick screens, that's the game that we don't want to play with them. We have to get off the field.
All right, now let's bring in Seth Walder from ESPN and Phil Perry. All right, there they are, as advertised. Seth Walder from ESPN, Phil Perry, the Senator, is with us as always. Seth, give us an idiot's guide to these receiver tracking metrics, RTMs going forward.
That's right, the RTMs. The idea here is to use player tracking data to quantify receiver skills in 3 different attributes, what we call open score, catch score, yak score. And the idea is, like, I'll take open score as an example, is to try and measure a player's ability to get open relative to expectations. So not just separation, right? Like we want to take into account leverage and angles, but also understanding what's happening on the play. Are they running a post route and the defense is in man coverage, and who's throwing to you? Was the ball underthrown if it's targeted? And we also quantify openness on untargeted routes, which I think is really crucial. Catch score, same kind of idea. What's the player's ability to make a catch over expectation? So given the attributes of the play, it's a dig versus cover 2, and you have Mac Jones throwing to you. How likely are you how often do you make that catch more than we would expect from an average receiver? Yak, last kind of thing, similar deal. At the time of reception, given where all the players are on the field at that time, how many yards of yak would you expect to get? How many did you get?
So that yak score that he has, is it a yak score relative to what a normal receiver would do, or what that receiver would do?
What a normal receiver would do.
What'd you learn about the Patriots?
So to me, the most interesting number was so far, and these are, I got a caveat here, small samples. It's a variant statistics. We've only got 4 games, but Nelson Agholor, I think, has a 71 open score, which is really high so far this season. And that is a bit of an eyebrow raiser for me. I mean, that's a high number, puts him with a lot of good receivers. I think if you look at the Packers game, 2 receptions that stand out to me there. He had a deep out and then a crosser, both to the left side of the field from the quarterback's perspective. He's wide open on those plays, wide open. And so I think, maybe the crosser, it's because there was a defensive miscommunication, but ultimately he got open. And so that to me was pretty surprising. And on the flip side, Jacoby Myers, who's a guy that actually has performed exceptionally well in open score in the past, is really low on this, and it's a little harder for me to determine what's going on there. I do wonder if the scheme change is a factor for Myers, but that's been a bit of a surprise because he's really stood out in that category before.
Seth, I'm just curious on a couple of different things and how they impact these scores, particularly the open score, because I think, what's great about covering this league the last few years, I think a lot of people have become a little bit more familiar with the next gen stats, and you can go and you can check on what kind of separation different receivers are generating. But it does seem like if you're more of a shorter target, meaning you're targeted in the short area of the field, you tend to create more separation, which would make sense because I think defenses first and foremost don't want to get beat. So you might be sagging off somebody who catches all their passes at 0 yards, from the line of scrimmage. So I'm curious, somebody like Nelson Agholor, who's targeted deep down the field, does he get more credit for being just a step ahead of somebody than somebody like Damian Harris, who's targeted in the flat and may have nobody within 10 yards of him? And the other thing I'm wondering is just about play action, because on a couple of those Nelson Agholor catches you mentioned, I think both of them were play action passes. So do players get docked a little bit in terms of their open score because the scheme is part of the reason they are open?
I'm so glad you asked, especially that first question, because it's a great point. And that's, I think, like the basis of why we need metrics like this. Separation, it's very, it's cool that we're able to measure that. But for exactly the reason you said, there's a bunch of factors that have nothing to do with your ability to get open that determine your separation. Like you said, if it's 3rd and 10 and you're running a 5-yard route, yes, you're going to get separation, but that's not that helpful. And so the way I always say is, like, if I have 1 yard of separation, am I open? Well, if I'm running a go route at you and you are 1 yard ahead of me and running faster than me, I'm not open at all. But if we flip those two things and I'm 1 yard past you, I'm wide open. And so the idea of open score is, yes, to actually quantify true openness, not just separation. And so, yeah, a guy like Agholor, it's not necessarily how much separation do you have, but is there a window for the ball to come to? Are you actually truly open? The second part is a great question that I honestly can't remember the answer to. I'm going to assume the answer is yes, because it's a great point. Play action certainly opens things up in the pass game. I think the answer is yes, but I am going to have to check with Brian Burke, who created these metrics, because I can't remember. But it's a great question.
Transparency. We appreciate it. We embrace it here. The upshot of why we're conversing about this is the Patriots offense right now is still in transition mode with Matt Patricia as their play caller. Obviously, we've hit pause, I think, on the offense this week and last week as Mac Jones goes down and wait for him to get back. But I want to flash up these scores again for the Patriots open scores relative and ask you, Seth, relative to the rest of the league, what do they look like? And of course, the question then will become, what are some of the things we're going to bring Matt Cassel in to discuss? What are some of the things that the Patriots could do to improve these? But let's throw those scores up again. You see the Patriots are an open score of 53, a catch score of 70, and a yak score of 52. What are you inferring from that through the first 4 games?
Yeah, so the open score is kind of middle of the road there for right around 50, which is right what we expect. I think that's tied for 18th. I think, Agholor, we mentioned bringing that up. You've got Myers bringing that down so far, and no one else on the Patriots has, had enough targets to qualify. So we don't count them individually, but they do get counted in the team score. I think that you look at the group of receivers the Patriots have. I don't think you have a superstar there, so I wouldn't expect them to be at the top of the list. I think average might make sense. I think, you look at catch score, to me, is going to be a thing on a team level that might be a little bit, through just 4 games, I wouldn't bank on that as being a thing that's going to be awesome for them going forward.
But to interrupt, it better be good, though. They better have a high catch score if they're not going to have a high open score, right, Phil? Because you got to find a way to win. So if you're going to be average and open, you better have guys with good hands who pull stuff in traffic.
Well, I would think, right, Seth? So this is an offense that's kind of banked on and relied on winning 50-50 balls through the first few weeks of the season, especially with Mac Jones at quarterback. So is it possible that catch score, I know it's a small sample size, But is that something that you're just anticipating because of what you've seen based on the numbers you have? You're anticipating that's going to come down almost no matter what, which could mean bad things for this Patriots offense that relies on making those contested catches.
I wouldn't say almost no matter what. I just think like regression is somewhat likely, but I do think, I think one of the most notable numbers that came out of here was how high Kendrick Bourne's catch score was last year. And if he's getting on the field more going forward, I would have to think that improves their chances of keeping that catch score high. Like if it is that situation where they're not getting open at a great rate, and so they have to win those 50-50 balls, I would think that he would be a guy that you would want to put on the field to help that chances.
Let me go through this real quick. This is from last week when you guys unveiled this. Here's some intel on Kendrick Bourne that you guys observed. I'm going to read it right now. Kendrick Bourne leads the NFL in catch score since 2021. It says Bourne technically just missed our qualifying cutoff, but his 91 catch score over the past 2 seasons was too strong a result to ignore. It's surprising not only because Bourne isn't a big name, but because he's had a hard time getting on the field for New England in 2022. In fact, if we lowered the qualifying threshold to include Bourne, he would have ranked 3rd overall in 2021 and would be 1st from the start of 2021 to now. Not going to Seth here, going to Phil. What's this prove? What we've all surmised? Do the Patriots need to pivot?
I don't think there's any question they need to pivot. And I think they actually started to pivot in Green Bay just a little bit in some of those 3 receiver sets where we saw for multiple weeks LJ Humphrey getting the nod over Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne started to get on the field. So he's still not their most used or even their second most used receiver. But I think in those 11 personnel packages with 3 receivers on there, we're going to start to see Bourne a little bit more. To me, this explains, Seth, why Kendrick Bourne is so trusted, because even though he's had a hard time getting on the field, it feels like it takes about 3 seconds for Mac Jones to find him with a target because there is some chemistry there and there's got to be trust there from the quarterback to the receiver because he's so good at hauling in these passes.
Yeah, what happened? What was it? Week 1? Was it first route or second route? He catches that 40-yard ball. It took no time at all.
It's wild. He caught. And again, the numbers stick in my freaking head because they're so eye-popping. 70 targets last year, 55 catches, 800 yards, even. Seth Walder from ESPN, really appreciate you taking the time. We're going to bring in Matt Cassel and also talk to Phil about maybe what the Patriots can do to tweak what they're doing. Or as they go against the Lions, do they kind of just have to stick status quo? You can't tweak too much with the Zap Daddy in there. All right, welcome back in, everybody. Before we get to Cassel and Phil talking about what the Patriots could do to tweak their offense, I want you to listen to this from Sean Payton. He was on FS1 with Colin Cowherd talking about some of the things that maybe Denver could do to help Russell Wilson out. And I found this instructive because it gives insight into how an offensive mind might attack things to make his quarterback more comfortable. Hit it.
I'd want to cut up of all Russell's past plays of 30 or more yards from the field. And I'd want to see, are there some schemes that he felt very comfortable with? Like, I know that they did a great job in Seattle of bringing him off of a naked boot and then pulling up. And we all saw that like throwback to Lockett across the field where the ball traveled 60 yards in the air.
Right.
Then I'd want to look at another film of his red zone touchdown passes inside the 20. And so what I'm asking for from assistants is I'm asking for some of his greatest hits and to make sure that we have those song lyrics available. and if not, let's put them in.
Now we bring in Matt and Phil to discuss how the Patriots can tweak things and also this matchup with the Lions.
All right, Matt, you heard there Sean Payton talk about finding a quarterback's greatest hits and trying to play those for that quarterback to help make him feel comfortable. I feel as though the Patriots didn't necessarily do a great job of that with Mac Jones through 3 weeks, barely any RPOs. We know that's something he pushed to have added to the offense this offseason as they were making changes to the scheme. And they were last in the league, at least through 3 weeks before his injury, in terms of their play action percentage. So to me, the fact that we saw Bailey Zappi actually run a few RPOs, throw some play action passes. I think he had 6 play action attempts of his 15 total attempts. That's a great sign, because to me, that means when Mac Jones comes back, they may actually incorporate more of these things that could help Mac Jones the way they tried to help Bailey Zappi in week 4.
Right. And I think as they get this run game going, I think that you're going to see more play action pass. And you saw it last week against Green Bay. Bailey Zappi with the RPO. I mean, that's something that's also a product of a lot of times during these runs, especially the gap schemes and the single back runs, you've got a bubble out there. You've got an option to throw something quick, like you said, with the RPO. Now, I don't know if that was specifically game plan for Bailey Zappi, or if it was already in the game plan is, hey, if you don't get the look that you want because they're loading the box, let's just throw the bubble and move on, or do something like that. So look, these are easy plays, they're easy completions. And also when you get the run game going the way that they have, and the offensive line has been as dominant and coming off the football, yes, that's play action territory right there. That's what you want to do as a play caller. But I do think that they made a lot of strides in the first game against Miami. I just felt like they weren't winning a lot on first and second down. The run game wasn't as dominant. And so they were getting in passing situations in which you're kind of forced to drop back. The play action is not as effective. But even when you look at the progress that this team continues to make, they went 3 wide, 4 wide, even sometimes against the Steelers. It was more drop back principles. They knew what they were getting. And so they've made progress. They've continued to get better each and every week offensively. But it is exciting to see if they can continue this run game once Mac Jones comes back, how much more it'll evolve into that more play action pass game.
What do you look at for this weekend against Detroit? I mean, on one hand, you can scrutinize the numbers that we spoke about with Seth Walder, or we can look at tendencies that they've developed and say, okay, we got to keep expanding. We got to keep trying to, get Hunter Henry on track, figure a way to get Kendrick Bourne involved. That's all well and good. But is it kind of any port in a storm when you have Bailey Zappi out there? In terms of, we can't expand. We gotta contract.
Yeah, you definitely have to minimize what he does, because he's still a young player. This will be his first start in the league, and he's a rookie. And so when you go out there, even with me being in the system for 4 years when I took over, I knew that system front and back. I knew protection schemes. I was familiar with all the route concepts, how we like to call the game. But at the same time, they condensed that game plan and said, hey, let's do some just really focus in on these particular plays, first and second down. Let's throw a lot of screens, get you into a rhythm, get you more comfortable. But that grew as my experience came throughout the course of that season. However, for Bailey Zappi, that's exactly what you want to do, just like they did in the game. You want to establish the run, get him comfortable, get him some easy throws, progression reads, simplify it for him, not always having to go one side or the other side, do all the pre-snap, because this defense for the Detroit Lions, if you see them, they throw a lot at you. They're going to blitz you. They're going to play a lot of man coverage. They're going to challenge you at the wide receiver position. Now, look, they've been god awful, and everybody will point to that, right? They're last and third down, points given up, yards per game, run defense. I mean, they've been god awful. So you're sitting there licking your chops, but at the same time, you do not want to overwhelm him with a ton of drop back pass game, because they have multiple fronts, a ton of variation, and they're going to come after him and try to pressure him and get him uncomfortable. So the best thing that they can do is calm it down by establishing the run in this game.
I feel like they're going to be able to do that too, right? The Lions are allowing almost 6 yards per carry this season through 4 games. I mean, it's got to be nauseating for any defensive person anywhere to watch this defense try to operate. So if there's a soft spot for Bailey Zappi to land in his first start ever, it's probably this one.
But the Lions have to be looking at that too, right? I mean, they're saying, holy crap, we look like ass through 4 games. If we go out there against Bailey Zappi and a collection of wide receivers who are, right now fairly average, and they can't even get it to a tight end. And if this kid goes out and throws for 320 on us, so they run for 212 yards, we should all be fired. I mean, that to me is it's such a fascinating coaching matchup, because in a way, the pressure is greater on the Detroit Lions coaching staff than it is on the New England Patriots. This is a great opportunity for the New England Patriots coaching staff, Matt. I'm cleaning bow fur off of my microphone. For the New England Patriots coaching staff to really maybe grab that buy-in that we've wondered if the Patriots team had this year. I mean, if you can do what you did against Green Bay as a coaching staff and then follow it up with a game plan that takes care of business at home against the Detroit Lions, we're not going to be sitting around talking as much about, well, Matt Patricia shouldn't even be anywhere near the play sheet. Will we?
No, I mean, Matt Patricia's done an outstanding job, in my opinion. And you even go back, look, the Baltimore Ravens game, that is a winnable game. They had the turnovers that killed them in that game, but it's still at one point after Nelson Aguilar fumbled that ball on the 31-yard line, it's 31-26. I mean, this is a game, despite the turnovers, they're still in it against the Baltimore Ravens, in which they didn't play well defensively in the second half, but they got better. They had explosive plays. They're running the ball well. Then you go down to Green Bay. They're a 9.5-point underdog. You got your third string quarterback in there, and it takes all 5 quarters for them to Green Bay to finally kick a field goal and win that game. So this team needs to take advantage of a team like this that's struggling. You even heard their coach, Dan Campbell, say they've lost their confidence. Aaron Glenn, you have to think that the pressure is 100% on him because his job security is at risk. Their offense has been so productive this season. They're one of the top offenses, 1 or 2 in the league. Jared Goff's playing well. They have explosive plays to 9 different guys on that team. So the focal point is going to be Aaron Glenn. If he doesn't get it done, he's probably not going to have a job very much longer in this league, at least for the Detroit Lions.
I think what's interesting about this Lions team, mentioned how bad their run defense is and why that might help the Patriots. They're right now the most efficient rushing offense in football. They're averaging, so they're giving up almost 6 yards per carry on the defensive side. They're also averaging almost 6 yards per carry on the offensive side. So to me, Tom, this is 2 teams that are going to come out, try to run the hell out of the ball. The Patriots defense is at a heck of a time trying to stop the run themselves. They're allowing over 5 yards per carry so far this year. So we may see both teams run the ball 35 times. I don't know if that's going to lead to a whole lot in the way of points, but it could end up looking like it's, 1983 out there.
And that'll be interesting to see how quickly these offensive coordinators and offenses pivot. If the Patriots are trying to take away the run because they have not done it very well and they're closer to the bottom of the league in terms of yards per carry allowed, Jared Goff can throw it. TJ Hawkinson can catch it. They have other players as well who have been explosive for them on the outside. So we'll see which way these offenses go. But I would imagine that Detroit is in a much better situation to be varied offensively than the New England Patriots are. Who's the key on this, Phil? Is it what Bailey Zappi does to put points on the board? Or is what the New England Patriots do to limit Detroit from getting up into the upper 20s and low 30s? Because I don't see the New England Patriots getting, well into the 20s against Detroit, regardless of how bad they've been.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is going to come down to the Patriots defense. If they can do anything close to what they did in the first half against Green Bay, then they should be okay. But this run game issue has been an issue now for, it feels like, multiple years, Matt. I mean, for a long, long time, the way we looked at the Patriots defense was if you decided to run against the Patriots, they would just add bodies to the box. It was a numbers game. They could figure it out and they could stop you. I'm not sure they're there right now. And I think the signing that they made this week is a practice squad signing, but to add Jamie Collins to the mix, that feels a little bit desperate to me. And I think it tells you how Bill Belichick feels about his linebacking core. They haven't had a major injury at that position to bring somebody like that back. But Mac Wilson looks like he's in the doghouse. 10 snaps against Green Bay, gets benched for Jelani Tavai, who's a bigger, hulking 250-pound linebacker. Raekwon McMillan doesn't get a single snap defensively. He's dealing with a thumb injury, but he played on special teams. He was available. They didn't use him. They want their 250-pound linebackers back out there, I think, because Bill Belichick's looking at this run defense and he's saying, we don't have the bodies to be able to stop this. We got to do something about it. So that, to me, is going to be the problem for Gerard Mayo, Steve Belichick, and Bill Belichick to solve this weekend.
They're going to have to deal with this run game because this is a physical offensive line. The Detroit Lions have one of the best offensive line in all of the National Football League, in my opinion. They're physical. They come downhill. They give you a variety of different run looks, inside zone, outside zone, gap scheme, and they're physical at the point of attack. They can get to the second level. So, again, this is one of those games that the defensive front is going to have to step up, and I understand why they've made a little bit of those adjustments. They're trying to get bigger, more physical, especially at the end of the line of scrimmage. Now, I think the outlier was Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, and what he can do with the ball in his hands. That's different. Like, you're not going to face a guy like that this week. It's going to be your primary runs that you always see with a quarterback that's more of a drop back pocket passer like Jared Goff. But they've got guys that can hit it, and it's the offensive line. So they're going to have to be physical this week and control that line of scrimmage, because I think Lawrence Guy last week being out, that hurt them in the middle of that defense, because he's been a guy that can hold down and actually take on double teams and do all that. But this is another run offense that's going to come downhill at you and try to pick up those runs, and they've been very successful at doing so.
All right. Well, the quarterback speculation is going to continue throughout the week with Mac Jones creeping closer. He had limited participation during this week as it went forward. So we'll see exactly where he ends up and whether he ends up on the field. Last question, Matt, is just quarterback related.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage, acknowledging that every guy wants to play, but Bill Belichick has to do some mathematics here, doesn't he? All right, 50% of Mac, not able to move, can really only hand it off here. Don't want him standing back there too long because they're not going to be able to escape if you get. All right. There's a point at which he has to say it's not going to be worth it. Just go with Zappy.
Right. And that's
Zappy. So
yeah, I don't know what the percentage is, but he needs to be at least 80% healthy, I would say, in order to go around and actually be able to play the game that he wants to play, get himself out of trouble. Because, again, this defensive front and what they do schematically for the Detroit Lions is they're going to rush him. They're going to come after him. And if he's a sitting duck back there, that's always a recipe for disaster. And you also put him at risk for getting hurt for a longer period of time. So unless he's close to being fully healthy, I would not put him out in the game and subject him to either further injury or being out for a longer period of time, and then have to answer those questions of, well, why was he even playing in the first place? He didn't look like himself. He wasn't able to step in his throws, rather than go with the younger guy, maybe obviously the inexperience and stuff like that. But Zappy showed that he's got some maturity to him, how he handled that situation on the road in Lambeau, and give him an opportunity to go out there and see if he can get the job done.
Yeah, I think, Tom, if you look at this, I like that 80% number too that Cassel just threw out there for Mac Jones, because all those things we just talked about how play action, more of it could benefit this Patriots offense. And if they're running the ball really well, it's something you should be able to do more of. If Mac Jones can't really move all that well, I think it would be really difficult for him to be from under center and executing some of those hard play action fakes, 5-step, 7-step drop, whatever it is, setting up deep in the pocket, lengthy plays in terms of the time off the clock, sitting back there for, 3.5, 4 seconds to try to throw it down the field. Doesn't feel like a recipe for success for me. So if that's part of what your game plan is going to be, you do have to have some mobility at that quarterback spot.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating, because that's really what it should come down to. All right, how well can you escape? How well can you drop back? How well can you deal with the pain? And they're going to need Mac Jones to be as candid and transparent as he can be, because you can't go out there and waste reps, waste series, and put yourself at risk of a broken clavicle because you couldn't get away from Aiden Hutchinson. All right, good stuff, boys. All right, thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Thanks to John Henry for putting this all together. The Skull Crusher gets it done every single week. Make sure you join us on pregame live and postgame live coming up Sunday. Enjoy your weekend. See you soon.